and welcome back to the Collin Cadmus Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Andy Mewborn. Andy studied electrical and computer engineering at Seattle University and then launched his career as an electrical engineer. He then founded two companies, Gridlee and Limelite, prior to joining Outreach, where he started as an early product employee, transitioning over 7 years through leading customer success, sales engineering, and finally as 4 times President's Club winner, crushing enterprise sales. After Outreach, Andy co-founded Taplio and sold it to Lemlist before starting his most recent and current venture, Distribute, where he serves today as the founder and CEO. Andy is amongst the rare few in SaaS who have both product and sales experience, so I'm particularly curious to get his thoughts on all that's changing in B2B sales and to learn more about what he's building at Distribute. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave us a comment if you have questions. If you're joining us from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review and let us know what you think of the episode. This stuff really helps to grow the audience. Without further ado, let's dive in and get his thoughts. Andy, thanks for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, man. I'm excited. Let's do this. We've been friends for now, what? Like,
I was trying to think of that.
For, probably 6 years, 7 years?
It's got to be close to 6 or 7. Yeah.
You were at AirCall.
You were at Outreach. I was at AirCall. Yeah. That's when we started chatting.
Yeah, we started chatting. You were kind of early on the LinkedIn content game. I remember that. And I was like, oh shit, this guy's like got some really cool stuff that he's saying. And yeah, man, you were early on it. And Justin Welsh around that same time. Who else was early? Kind of Kevin Dorsey. It was just like Scott Lee's.
Yeah. That was the crew, man. That was
the crew. That was the you
had Chris Orlob, you had you, right? So
I was just getting started. You guys were already blowing up, but
you flew past me with followers, dude. I mean, I took almost 2 years off because of health problems that I was just telling you about before we started. But everyone flew past me, man. Everyone flew past the 100K mark, and I basically dwindled down. Then when I came back on LinkedIn, actually, I don't know, it's been almost a year, I want to say, or maybe it's been more like 6 months since I came back. But as I came back, I lost like 10,000 followers. They sent out, I don't know, some message on LinkedIn saying that they're getting rid of like inactive accounts or something, and a bunch of us lost a bunch. So I came back and like lost a bunch. I went back down to, I want to say I was at like 85, then it went down to 75, and now I'm working my way back up. But nice, yeah, man. We started chatting, I want to say it was like 6 or 7 years ago. I think you were trying to sell me Outreach at the time. I think that's how we that's probably how we first
I think that probably was. Yeah.
We were on Sales Loft or something, I think.
Yeah, then I was definitely probably trying to sell you Outreach. I was like,
we ended up
using that tool, man. Get over here. But no, so much has happened in that 5, 6, 7 years. Holy crap, man. Just like, I think about 5 years ago and how like the B2B sales landscape has changed, and it's wild. It
is insane. That's actually a perfect tee up. I don't know if you looked through the questions in advance, but you just
I did. And okay. I'm trying to make your job easy, Collin.
You teed it up nice. So that's what I want to ask you. And for those who might be just tuning into this episode as the first episode, I've been going through a lot of the same questions with everyone because I really want to consolidate or sort of it's kind of bring everyone's answers together and get a sense of where everyone stands on this. So specifically on the B2B outbound sales area, what do you think is broken there, and how did we get here?
Man, how did we get here? So,
and no one better to ask than someone who's been selling Outreach, by the way, right?
Yeah, and we kind of built the first B2B sequencing tool, right? So like, there's a lot. When you ask that question, I sit and think because my mind just goes like beep, boop, 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 like there's so much stuff, right? Well, I think like anything, let's kind of start at the beginning and go back a little bit. So in 2015, 16, when I was one of the early people at Outreach and we were building it, we hit product market fit and that felt crazy. People said, oh my God, I can like just put people into a sequence and I can literally predict how many like responses I'll get. And so the system was, okay, well, if that's the case, put in 100 people. For every 100 people you do this. Oh, well, if that is the case, then, let's hire more people and plug them into the system so they can each handle this many contacts. And, it was like spreadsheet math, right? And so we got into this like spreadsheet linear predictability era of like, hey, if you do this, then this will happen. And then everyone started to catch on. Well, what happens when everyone catches on to something? Everyone starts to do it. When everyone starts to do it, then guess what? It doesn't work anymore. So that is like a
fashion.
It's like fashion. Then you got to look for what's different. Well, this one is interesting because now what we're seeing is a lot of these AI SDRs, and personally, I think this is the wrong direction. And I'll tell you, and maybe not, maybe I don't know enough, but let me just from a first glance, I haven't used any one of these AI SDR tools. What I see them is more of the same, which is just like, okay, now you're doing robots to send all the emails versus having a person do it. I don't really think that's doing more volume doesn't necessarily mean more outcomes, right? More positive outcomes. So I think that's a big problem that a lot of people kind of don't realize. Now, let me tell you something here though. If you find something that works and then you throw volume at it, yes, that works really well. Here's the problem is that from the root of where people start, it's crappy in, and then they try and scale it, and it's way more crappy out, right? And that's where I think where the big problem is, right? And so, okay, well then what's next? What's actually the solution? So if we think that that's a problem, throwing more volume at everything is not great, and you'll hear a bunch of gurus, Hormozy, and all these people say more volume is always the answer. It is when the root of what you're doing is working. Yes, it is. But the problem is most people don't have that mindset of figuring out what is working and then let's scale it. So I'll give you an example of kind of where I think this sequencing is going. And someone should actually build this product. If I wasn't building Distribute now, I would. But what the mindset people need to get into with these cold email campaigns is what I call, I'm actually going to release like a lead magnet for this, but it's more micro sequences. It's testing one piece of messaging and seeing what works. It's almost like when you run ads, if you've ever run ads on Facebook ads or anything, the people who are doing great at advertising with Facebook are the ones that do the most creative testing. And the process of how it works is, and I run ads and, I've gotten the best coaches and all this fun stuff, right? And the way it works is it's not really hard to run ads anymore. The secret sauce is in the creative. And what you're constantly doing is every week I test new creative and I see if it beats. I'm constantly doing A/B testing, and I see if it beats the last creative. So you test set A, and set A, you say, okay, this is our best set right now. I'm gonna use that as a control. I'm gonna now test that against a new set of ads B. You let it run for a week. B doesn't beat A. Okay, so now you try C. So that mindset, it's just a scientific method, right? Now that process.
This is the digital graphic you're talking about, really, like the ad graphic to be tested.
This is the ad graphic, exactly, right? This is like the ad graphic is the creative, right?
Right.
Now, why I'm telling you all this, and I know it sounds like we're weaving here. We're gonna weave, right?
It's okay. Let's weave.
Yeah, we're gonna weave. So if you think about that and advertising, what people respond to, what they connect with, what they say, okay, shoot, let me click that link and let me say, yes, you got me, right? That same principle needs to be applied to email, right? And people haven't figured that out yet. They just think like, oh, I'm going to personalize. I'm going to do this clay table. Don't get me wrong, clay is a great product. I love it. It's amazing. But I'm going to do this clay table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to personalize every single email because I can do that at scale, right? Well, guess what? If you're testing 50 versions, let's say you email 100 people and everything is different, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You don't know what is going to work because you have 100 different versions. You don't have a control. And so they may say, but everything else in the email is the same. We're just testing the personalization. Well, then, my argument to that is, well, like if everyone's sending this cheesy personalization, then no one's actually personalizing. So then you look, because everyone knows it's AI. Right? Which is actually even worse. So when you go back to this, coming full circle here, I think where it's changed is that now you need to treat your cold email like performance marketing, right? You need to treat it like and this is where I go back to tiny little sequences or these micro sequences where you're not creating a 50 step fucking sequence at a time. You're creating literally all the sequences we use are 2 steps, one main message and then a bump email. And we're seeing if that works. Yes. And then once we figure out if that works, we are then saying, pour the gas on that because holy shit, people love that, right? And so you're constantly and we do, and this is, I need to come up with a method name for this. I'm actually probably going to call it the tiny little sequence method or something, but
the two-step.
Yeah, the two-step sequence method, right?
That's a dance, right? The two-step.
Yeah, the two-step. Oh, it is a dance. That's a good point. That's a good point. And so what you're doing there is every week you're constantly testing something new. And because you're only doing a two-step email sequence, you're not annoying the hell out of people. So you're actually able to add more contacts, to test that. Now, that is the way we think about it. Now, what do you test when you look at these emails? Well, you're testing your call to action. You're testing the first line of the email, like what the hook is, because that should always be the hook, right? And then you're testing the PS line.
And subject, right?
And the subject, yeah. So you're testing the subject, you're testing the first line, you're testing the main CTA, and then you're testing the PS line, right? And so you're kind of testing these variables. And if you think about that, if you test those 4 variables alone, there's so many like permutations of that you can do.
Do you always put a PS line?
I always put a PS line.
Is that something you learned at Outreach, like through measuring that there's a big...
Anecdotally, yes. I'll tell you why you do it today, right? Because if you think about deliverability, so you say, PS, if this isn't for you, say stop, right? Or say something like that. Or you put a cheesy joke. I have one now that's like, I'm selling, I'm trying to get AEs to use the product. So we send messages to AEs and you have to make it funny and humorous, because I know my crowd, right? And so we put it in the PS, hey, if this doesn't resonate, reply back with, in quotes, stop it, you yapper, right? And so people are like, that's funny, okay? Yeah. And it does 2 things. I say, okay, let me respond to this because one, that's like a little bit of, that's humorous and, it resonates with me because I'm a yapper too, And then second, what it does is it gets you a reply. And a reply triggers the system to say, oh, this is actually like a real email. We're not going to mark it as spam. So it actually helps your deliverability score. So there's kind of 2 tactics to that, right? But yes, your PS is always either going to be like something that kind of tries to get them over the edge with humor, or is your actual ask, is the way I think about it, right? So that's the way I structure emails, and I get responses all the time. I can show you like every day, probably 10 to 20 that's like, oh my God, I'm going to steal this email and I'm going to steal this.
I hadn't thought about the notion of getting them to reply versus getting them to use a CTA in terms of deliverability for the future. Is that a really strong reason to almost really try to opt towards your CTA being a reply rather than clicking a scheduling button or something that drives them out of the email?
Your goal is to get them to say yes. Yeah, your goal is to get them to say yes or no. Like, even if it's no, great, you still win. Because it helps your deliverability. Yeah. Right? Like,
whereas if you just send a scheduling link, it's like you just get a lot of no replies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the worst thing you can do. Like, is straight up send your scheduling link. So that is one thing to think about. Now, the other thing, let's kind of come back to this. So what does this mean? This means that people need to test more on their email sequences, and they need to treat it like a creative test. What is going to work? Here's the problem with these AI SDRs is they're just sending a bunch of junk that, and from my experience of what I've seen, and I could be wrong, and this could change, and I could be proven wrong. Please, someone message me and prove me wrong. But what I've seen is it's like, oh, we'll do all the personalization for you automatically with the robot, and then we'll send it, and then we'll let it do its thing. Well, that's the opposite of what you want to do. You want to stay super freaking close to every single way that you're positioning everything that you're delivering, right? And then you want to be able to like optimize on it. Now, I don't know if they're doing this, but the platform that I would want to see is an email testing solution like an Instantly or Smart Lead or whatever that actually builds out, you give it the components, you give it the subject line of this, and it does all the different variations of what's possible. And then it says, hey, Andy, here's the best variation. We sent this to 1,000 contacts and this is the best variation that you should use. That is the way we should think about it, right? Not necessarily like, okay, we're just going to do like this one first line is personalized, and then the AI robot's going to do a bunch of personalization there and then just send it out. And everyone knows it's fake personalization. So I think the root of where they're coming from here is, I don't know. It just doesn't, I don't think it's going to work, right? Is my opinion. And I hope I'm wrong. And I could listen to this a year from now and be like, well, one of these companies is huge now and it's the shit and whatever.
Yeah.
Fine, I'm wrong. I don't mind.
You'd probably
being
be a little bit right and a little bit wrong, right? It's probably
Yeah,
gonna be, I think, both. You know, I had Yuri, the CEO of AI SDR, on here a few episodes ago, and
Yeah.
he's super transparent. Like I was expecting him to be very defensive, very biased. Like he's not at all. Like
Yeah.
he's equally as curious to see if it will work as we are, which is
Yeah.
really cool. And what he said, the one big takeaway that I remember from that call, and this may change, maybe it gets better over time, but he was basically like, if you have not perfected outbound today, like this will never work for you. You need to figure it out on your own. And then when you have it so masterfully done that like you're just having humans reiterate this process over and over and over, he's like, that's where today this can be really helpful for you because you've literally figured out all the things that you just explained. He's like, if we can just replicate that and it's pretty straightforward and it's transactional and there's volume, that's where he sees it working today. But where he says it's like a disaster is when someone's trying to use AI SDR to figure out outbound. He's like, he's like, that is not what it's going to do for you today. But like, if you have a process where you're like, if I hire 20 more SDRs, like, I know it's going to create this because we have this playbook and it just works. He's like, today we can plug that in and like, we can get you some comparable results in many cases, but will it last? I mean, probably not, right? Because they're going to just keep trying to block, all this type of tech. Google's going to do what they can to block it. Like, there's going to be a resistance against this, which has already been going on forever. So I think it's going to be sort of this double-edged sword where as it gets better, it also just gets blocked and people get more resistant to it. So I think it will be like we'll see some wins and some losses. But the other point that he made was that he thinks that actually AI is going to be more impactful on the buying side and that people are going to use AI buying tools rather than like we're all thinking about how do we use AI to sell shit. Well, what if no one even cares about salespeople anymore because they just go to AI when they have a problem and it solves it for them. It tells them what to buy. It tells them where to go. Then I think it becomes a game of AI SEO, which is like, how do we make sure that Distribute shows up when someone starts talking about their problems in ChatGPT? It's like, how do you get all that data ingested into there? So I think we're headed in that kind of direction. But let's jump to the next topic. I want to get your thoughts here. And I got it from Mark Cosiglo as well, which was cool to hear his take. But, coming from having been at Outreach and you were there early and you got to see like a bunch of different phases there. So you lived through growth at all costs to the T.
Yeah.
What do you think is like... especially as you're starting your business now today. And I don't know what you've done in terms of funding. I imagine you're probably doing a lot of this yourself because you've got the engineering chops and I don't know how much coding you do. Do you full out code or no?
Not these days. No, about a year and a half ago or so. Yeah. And then we raised some money and
but know how to, I mean.
Yeah. So like I still run our engineering team today.
Okay. That's why I wasn't sure because I know electrical engineering and then you also studied computer engineering, but I didn't know how how much the two overlap. So right, so you are legitimately a product engineering / sales founder. Like you are a full stack founder, so to speak.
Yeah. People, they're like, you're a unicorn.
Yeah, it's rare. It's really rare.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah.
It's for sure rare. But it's there's this Naval quote that I love that I read and I'm like, fuck, should I be like doing sales too and figuring this sales thing out or go like, full in on product? And, there's this Naval quote that I love, which is like, learn to build, learn to sell. If you can do both, you'll be unstoppable.
Yes.
Right. And so it's so far it's worked out pretty well for me.
I wish I could build a product, man.
Like
I would be in my glory. But did you fall down the road of just building too much shit at one point? Because I feel like I would just try to start building all my ideas, and I would have to eventually have some discipline with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity towards that, and I'll say that like the way you figure things out is by tinkering.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm a tinkerer. So that's why I wish I could.
Yeah, like it's like anything. You tinker, you throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, you find one thing that works and then you double down on it. It's the same thing as content, right?
Yeah.
Like content is a product, and I think people, they think you have to code to build a product, no, you don't have to, especially nowadays, you can build freaking products with AI. Like it's stupid how amazing it is, but simple products, right? And actually simple products is what people want to download these days. So, in general, but I think, kind continue to tinker, man. And I think even content is a product, right? It's a product of your distribution system. So like, it's just like that. If you want to build a SaaS particularly, it's literally the same as building, a content strategy. It's like, you try a bunch of stuff, you say a bunch of things, and then you start to figure out your voice. And then you're like, okay, this is it. We're going to double down on this. Like if you see what I'm posting on LinkedIn right now, it's a lot of video stuff with like templates. Guess what? We started this last Monday. We found a hit on Monday. And that same day, we just said, all right, we're doubling down on this. And now we're doubling down on it until it doesn't work again. Right. So, and it's getting us a bunch of users. It's amazing, right? And so that's the game. Now, same thing goes with SaaS, right? Like I've built so many things you've never heard of because they all failed, right? And so, and not even just SaaS. Like I'll tell you, 6 years ago, maybe 7, I was like just tinkering, and I was like, oh, can I sell stuff on Amazon? And I started selling like women's headbands, because I was like, oh, it's cheap, they're easy to send, and like I was like, okay, cool, and you can get them for a good price, and like,
Did you make good money?
No, it turns out it was the most, one of the craziest, most biggest commodities there is. But like, I learned a lesson, right? I learned how to like source things from other countries. I learned the shipping process. I learned all this stuff. And now for Distribute, like when we make like great merch like this and like send it out and do all this, like I know how to do it in 2 seconds, right? It's like, yeah, here's you tell people how to do it and you're done.
So I told you, I ordered one of the shirts and I was like, this is very cool swag. Like this is not your typical like company swag. This is very unique. Yeah.
So we're very big on like our brand. And I think brand we can get into this, but it's one of the last living moats you can have, especially in SaaS. It's already one of the last living moats in commodities like water. Look at Liquid Death, right? And so you like water is just it's all brand. It's just media company now. And so SaaS is kind of going that same way with AI, right? It's like you need to be able to like have a brand these days. Like that needs to be one of your first thoughts of like, how are we going to build a brand / media company around this? And so that's what we're big on, right? We're building, something cool. Like, for us, we do fun runs. Like we're doing one on Thursday with DG, with Adam Robinson, with Chris Walker. I started a run club called the Mariachi Run Club here in Austin. Nice. And it's all part of our same brand, which is like Mexican Day to Dead thing. We all do a run. We end with a mariachi band and tacos and coffee. And, we're kind of building like everything we do around that brand, right? And so I'm just big on it. I'm bullish on it. You need to think about it early. Some people say you're too early, but it's never too early to build kind of that following and those first 1,000 true people that like love, what you do. And so I think that is one of the last true moats in software, because to build a lot of the stuff is so easy these days. So anyways, we just went down a huge tangent.
Yeah, let me weave us back to...
let's weave back, man. Let's weave back. Yeah, for sure.
What I want to just get a quick sense of, after you've built some companies, you've sold some companies, you've been through the massive growth at all costs, model at Outreach. How are you thinking about growth at all costs today? Are you thinking that... Let me give it to you this way. I think there's a divergence happening. I think certain companies are seeing that they don't need to go this route of like raising an insane amount of money, hiring an insane amount of people, and just pushing for the T2, D3 and like it's make it or break it. I think a lot of people are now seeing that like slow and steady might actually be a pretty good way to do this thing. And maybe, we'll raise some money, but maybe we don't need to go so insane to the point that like it all becomes about headcount and sort of all of the things that have sort of snowballed into a lot of the problems we have today. But do you see that happening? And how are you thinking about that at Distribute? Is your kind of thought where like, hey, if this thing really picks up and it's doing well, like we just need to go raise $100 million and kind of do what Outreach did? Or do you kind of think there's a new path now where you can sort of be hyper efficient, have sort of a small elite and really efficient team and kind of achieve that same type of growth without all the insane amounts of venture capital?
Yeah, I'll say it's somewhere, there's 2 ends of the spectrum here. Right. There's the Sam Altman, like there's going to be a 1-person $1 billion company that's going to, build a $1 billion company. Right. And then on the other end is growth at all costs, rates hundreds of millions, burn rates insane. We've seen that in the ZERP era. So let's think about those as the 2 ends. I think it's somewhere in the middle, to be honest with you. I think now my last company was bootstrapped. So I've seen bootstrapped. I've seen growth at all costs.
And you sold it. Like you did well with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And we sold, all that fun stuff. And so I've seen both sides of this. And I think there's a couple of factors that play into this. I don't think there's one answer to it, right? And the first thing you want to think about is, what are you building, right? Like, if you're building enterprise SaaS, you're not going to be able to do a one-person billion-dollar company like in the next 10 to 20 years at least, right? Like not happening. Why? Because you still need people. If you've ever worked in enterprise and sold enterprise SaaS, you know how much actually goes into it, and governance and handholding and trainings, and you know, to do that all as a one person is just going to be, sure, AI could do training and stuff, but people want to be with people, and it's just going to be very tough if you're building an enterprise product, right? Distribute happens to be an enterprise product. We're definitely, you know, a lot of enterprise customers are in our pipeline. We're looking at that. We're also trying to figure out the SMB side, right? Almost like a HubSpot model. Where you know, that's kind of what we're looking at now.
Aircall was the same. All my companies were the same. I like when SMB is a great place to go, man, because you can close deals fast, you can learn fast. It's just a rock, and then you can just work on that enterprise like gradually. Yeah,
that's what we're doing, right? The product can be used by enterprise, right? Because that's how we know how to build things, just coming from outreach and building stuff. But also SMB, we kind of figure out like they love the product too, right? So there's that balance there. I'm, you know, quite frankly, still trying to figure out the right balance right now, and trying to get more velocity on the bottom end of the market, right? But I will say here that like going back to your question, it depends on what you want to build, right? For us, we're going to get some enterprise customers. We're going to do what we can to support those people and like make sure that they don't churn, right? And if that makes us want to hire a bunch of people, not a bunch, but enough to make sure they're supported and all that, we're going to do that and do what's right now. On the other end of the spectrum, if you think about, are we going to do I call it spreadsheet growth, because that's what it really was. It was like, oh, hey, we need to hit this number and each person can produce 250,000. And so with that spreadsheet model, you know, we need to hire this many people. Well, when you actually look at what was happening is, you know, a bunch of people don't have meetings on their calendars as salespeople. Something's not aligning. So we're definitely not going to do that. I call it more common sense growth, right? You know, spreadsheet growth. We're going to do common sense growth versus spreadsheet growth, right? Which is, do you guys feel busy? Yes. Can you handle more? Yes. Okay, then we don't need to hire more people. Yeah. Right?
Bingo.
There we go. Like, I'm sorry, it's common sense growth. So like, that's the way we're going to do it. And the way you figure that out is by talking to your team, right? And not listening to people. Don't get me wrong, I have investors and all that stuff, but like taking it with a grain of salt with what they say and what's actually happening, right? And that's super important for people to kind of stay close to all this stuff. So anyways, I think that's a wishy-washy answer. It's not like a silver bullet, you know, because it is super dependent. You know, more people, more problems is what I like to say. So like, yes, you want to keep it as nimble as you can, but you don't want to be so hard-headed that you're like, no, we're going to keep it small and then screw our customers and not give them the support they need because, you know, all this stuff. So it just really depends. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. And it's not an easy topic. It's not black and white, but yeah, I do think where we will probably see growth at all costs continue to just crush it is companies where they're just going for that market share. They have such a good product. They need the market share. They want to do it fast and they got a lot of money on the line. So investors don't care to waste a little extra to move faster. In those cases, like go for it. But what we've seen so much of over the last, 15 to 20 years is just people get a few customers and they think that they have the greatest product in the world. And then they hire 100 people and they're like, well, go sell it, go bring it to market. And you have a quota attainment of like 39%. No one's hitting quota. Everyone's complaining. And you just keep blaming salespeople, firing people, whatever. And it's like they just keep doubling down on this model, which ties into the next two topics. What do you think is the overall overarching reason for the low quota attainment? Just to set the stage there, it's under 40% throughout the industry for account executives. That's the data from multiple sources, is that literally quota attainment's under 40%. Do you have a high level sense of like what has contributed to that? I mean, I think it's growth at all costs. It's this concept of like raising quotas produces more revenue, hiring more people produces more revenue. And it's like false. So do you have additional takes on that?
Now we're really weaving. It goes back to the first topic we were talking about, which is experimentation and in having the mindset. Like one of our culture values at Distribute is like always be experimenting, right? Like they're trying to do old stuff that doesn't work anymore, right? And I think that's what's causing low quota attainment. And they're not experimenting enough with new tactics and new ways to build pipeline and then convert that pipeline. Right? Because it comes down to those two things. How do you build pipeline? How do you then convert the pipeline? And so when it comes to building pipeline, if we look at that kind of, side of the house, you look at they're sending just more higher volume emails of the same stuff that's not working, right? That is one thing there. I think that's kind of contributing to this. And this doesn't just come to your cold emails. This comes to positioning, right? This comes down to your messaging, your positioning, which honestly is probably 80% of everything with that these days, right? It comes down to, branding, right? How are you positioning yourself in the market? And I think a lot of people are in the set it and forget it mindset. So if you're setting it and forgetting and the market is changing and your offer is, hey, we have a software that's per user seat pricing. Here you go. Boom. Well, guess what? The market maybe doesn't really need your product anymore and they don't like per user seat pricing anymore, but you're still offering that. So when you look at markets as well, depending on what you're selling, markets become more sophisticated. Now we're getting into like this offer kind of concept here, right? But like the markets have become more sophisticated in terms of you can't just send a shit ton of cold emails anymore and then produce what you need to produce, right? The market now says that, hey, I want to see a shitload of testimonials. I want to see these people on the LinkedIn feed. I want to know that my friends are using it and actually getting a return on the product, right? So the bar has raised to these per user seat pricing type software. A lot of people aren't just buying crap anymore. They need to see proof. So the thing with a lot of these products is they're not leading with proof, right? They're not leading with any of that these days. And so what that is causing is, guess what? Because they're not adapting their processes, lower quota attainment. That's one. The second thing is I think a lot of buyers are confused right now because everything kind of sounds the same and has AI and all this stuff. And we're like in this kind of like holding period of like, holy shit, everyone has this AI now and is adding it. It's kind of hot and new. And everyone's trying to figure out like with now that we bolted on AI, how do we position ourselves? Is this other AI product that's 10 times cheaper going to come out and, beat us out? So I think that's a big one. Again, going back to my point about like software becoming commoditized, it's happening, right?
Yeah.
It's happening. And because it's becoming commoditized, there's more noise. So someone can say, hey, I have a video platform, and someone else can say, oh, I have it too, and it's 10 times cheaper, and it's literally the same thing. In a lot of cases, it kind of is, And so I would say those are two top of mind that come to me on why quota attainment is low. And then, I think the third thing, which I always freaking harp about, and going back to cold email, just because I know a lot of people probably that are on your crowd think about cold email, but like the way to get cold email, we talked about all these things like subject line and CTAs and all this stuff. But the really most important thing is the name that the email is coming from, right? And
brand wise, you mean? Or the person?
Brand wise, right? Or just the name. Is it recognizable? So yeah, brand, right?
The person or the company or both?
Either, right? Like, Let me give you an example. If my grandma emails me, I don't give a shit what the subject line is. I know it's my grandma.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to open the freaking email. Now that's a hardcore case, but people are like, well, how do I get my emails more open? Well, if it's coming from someone where you see them on the LinkedIn feed all day and then they email you, are you more likely to open that email?
There's some authority to it. Yeah.
There's authority, right? And credibility, right? And I think that is also huge here, right? And so when you think about this cold email, it's coming from all kinds of names, right? And so like, it's almost like, how do you bring it into your brand as well? And this is another thing, like a recognizable name. And this is why people are like, cold email doesn't work for me. And I'm like, well, let me see your cold emails. And it's like from a random name, an AI name that no one knows, right? An AI SDR name. And if you're producing content, you should have it come from your name, because that is what makes cold email work better. Right. And let's say you were the company. If people were fond of your company, when Liquid Death emails me, I open every freaking email because I'm like, I like this brand and I know like they're funny and it's probably going to be something wonky that like puts a smile on my face. Right. Yeah. And so they've made that content work for them on the email side as well. So anyways, I know I just went on a rant there, but like brand,
all good stuff.
Yeah. Coming back and weaving, to where this is going, brand is going to be huge. And like, you're going to see a lot of you'll look at my site and like people, I've had investors say, hey, I don't like your branding. It seems a little crazy. You have a donkey with a gold tooth. Like, and I go, thanks. See you later. Like, we're not changing. This is where we're going. Right. Yeah. And like, this is how we're going to, if you don't like that, you're not going to like a bunch of the other crazy ideas that we have coming. So you have to like stick with it. And it can get you in trouble. Cause like what we do is like, it's not your vanilla type of branding, right? It's not going to be like increase revenue. And here's a picture of someone at their desk, like that's just not what we're going to do. Right now we're sponsoring a Mexican wrestler in Mexico City to do, content with, right? And we're going to sponsor like a Mexican wrestler and it's going to be part of our like marketing strategy, right? So we're doing doing wonky stuff like this.
Stands out.
That stands out, that's different, that gets people talking, you know?
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to do things that are different. So it goes back, DG talks about this, but you have to have a CEO that gets marketing too, right? Like, luckily, I'm the one throwing these crazy ideas out. And so I love this type of crazy stuff. So we have an advantage there because from the top, we're like, hell yeah, do crazy shit that no one else would do. But if you're working at a company that's more old school and all that, then like, I get it. And some people have their hands tied, you know, and they can't go there. And so marketing, I get why there's friction, because marketing may be like, hey, we need to do something different. But then like old school people maybe above them are like, well, no, because this is how we've always done it, the more boring vanilla way, and it works, right? So, you know, you can't blame everyone in that case too. So
cool. Let me ask you, Outreach, one of the things I've noticed from Outreach, they have a lot of folks who had long tenure there. People stuck around for a while. A lot of people like yourself moved through a variety of different roles. What was the key to them making that happen? Did that come from the top? Was that like, this is our strategy, we don't want to let people go and we're going to keep paving a trail for people? Did you feel like there was almost a conscious effort of like to constantly try to find the next step for people there? Because it is not super common to see a lot of that, where you have executives and people who've been there for 7 or 8 years. Like, that's not super common. And yet, you know, it's like person after person from Outreach, it's just the same story. Is it because the revenue growth was so good, they just didn't have to keep cutting people like a lot of companies do? Or do you feel like they really did something sort of unique there in terms of developing a path for people?
So I would say when you have a company that's growing like that, you want to stay, when it's a rocket ship, you want to stay on it, right? And so that's why you see a lot of people stay. The longer you stay at a company, they tend, you know, after a few years, they give you more shares. You know, it's golden handcuff stuff. So, you know, you'll probably see that commonality at other companies as well. So that's one big thing.
But they're also not firing them, right? And that's what you see at most of these companies is like they bring in a VP sales, they're there for a year and a half. Even if sales go good, for some reason, they're gone out the door in no less than 2 years. The next person comes in. I mean, I'm looking from the outside in. Maybe there was a lot of that at Outreach. I just don't know about it. But I see so many people that just have these long tenures there. And I'm thinking, it's funny because when I asked Mark the same thing, he answered it very similar to you, as his perception was to explain why he didn't choose to leave. But really, I'm asking the question of like, why are they letting you guys stay there so much longer? No one else seems to get that opportunity. Like, do you think that that's like, because things are just going so well, like there's no pressure to be cutting people like some companies have? Or was it like a real cultural difference? Was there some sort of a commitment to people there that maybe you don't see at other companies?
Yeah, no, I think they did a great job at hiring people, right? Like committed, you know, Manny's great. And
it probably comes from Manny. He's if you can
he's very intense.
I want to interview him someday. I'd love to ask him that question.
Yeah, and he's very intense, you know, and he knows it. And so he's intense, he's intense, right? So like they were good at hiring intense people early on that are just like very loyal and committed and want to make things work. And then you tie that with like the rocket ship and you get more shares and you get the whole golden handcuffs, right? Which is good. For me, I will say, quite honestly, I was following my curiosity and I did a lot of roles at Outreach. One, you know, I wanted to like learn everything about a business because I knew I was going to be like, after this, I'm doing my own businesses. And that's what I did. Right. And I will say, although they supported me in that, a lot of people thought it was crazy. Right. A lot of people were like, oh, he's all over the place, or, you know, doesn't know what he wants. And it's like, no, I got bored in certain roles and I was just like, okay, I learned what I need to learn and I'm just going through the motions now. I want to learn the next thing. Right.
Yeah. And you basically got a free education, like soup to nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of seen everything in an organization. So and I kind of understand how every role works. Right. And have actually been in the weed, not just from a management perspective, but I've been in the weeds in every role. So I kind of understand how it all comes together, which you'll probably see that in how we've built Distribute, which is almost like the all-in-one workspace for go-to-market teams, right? Because you can see that's our goal, right? We start with like sales, and then we have people in customer success that love it, implementation that love it, and they can all collaborate in one workspace, right? It's almost like Notion for go-to-market teams specifically, right?
Yeah, give us the elevator pitch for someone who knows nothing. What is Distribute? What's the problem it's solving, and who should use it?
Yeah, for me, there's a couple problems it's solving. One, how do you show up good, right? Like, how do you give your buyers a premium experience. That's like the first big one. How do you stand out? With standing out, you increase win rates, and we can get in all the sales fluffy stuff.
You call it a deal room? Is it a deal room?
Yeah, that's the space we're in. We're trying to figure out what the right positioning is. I would say that's the category.
Yeah.
But people who look at us say like, dude, this is way different from like the standard deal rooms that I've seen, right? So we're trying to figure this out, and I'm kind of building in public here, I guess. I'm not going to like tell people like, oh yeah, we've got it all figured out. We don't. We're still a startup. We're 10 people. We're trying to figure all this shit out, you know? So like we play in that space for sure, you know, the digital sales room, deal room kind of area, but we also have video. So we're also like a video platform. And then we're also launching a call recorder. So now you can have all the content you need in one workspace versus needing Loom, Fathom, Notion. It's all in one place. So you can create all the resources you need fast and efficient, right, for your buyers. So that's the big one. Now, the problem we're solving is one, like in all the competitive deals I was in, when it came to like outreach and sales loft, a lot of the features are the same. Let's be honest, right?
Well, that was ultimately why we didn't switch. If you remember back, like when I started at Aircall, they were already on Sales Loft. They had it all set up, all integrated, all this sort of stuff. And when I checked out Outreach, I remember being like, well, this looks like the same thing almost. Like, I was like, I actually don't know that I could tell the difference. Like, I loved the Outreach brand and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that was sort of where we were at that time. I'm sure it's evolved since then, but that's why I think we didn't even end up making the switch, right?
Yeah. And honest, when I was selling Outreach, I want to tell you this, but yeah, like the feature parity's there. Now, if you get into the weeds, Outreach is definitely more enterprise for bigger customers, but for you know, SMB mid-market, you can get by with either. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So when you look at that, you think about, well, what helps you actually win then, right? And what helps you actually win is the narrative and how you show up to the customer, right?
And the brand too. And the brand.
Point. So when you look at that, you look at like what it actually comes down to. And it's like, if I'm working with 2 reps, I'm going to work with the rep that has their shit together. Again, common sense, right? Like I'm probably going to be like, this rep had everything in one place put together, had a plan built out for me. And it was easy for the rep to make, right? Because if it's not easy for the rep to make, they're not going to do it. So that's what we've thought about, right? Is like really winning more comes down to this. Weaving back to commoditization of software, that's going to be even more important is how do you show up and how do you show them how you're going to make them successful, right? And so that is really what we're trying to do and trying to help salespeople do without needing to go to marketing for like all the material and all this stuff. Like how do we easily build out for them? The second thing is, we were the OG kind of go-to-market platform Outreach in the early days, right? It was before there was it was us and maybe Gong just got started in Chorus and like all this other thousands of tools weren't out yet for sales, right? And so I've seen it go from 0 to 100 like really fast. And now there's this huge map of thousands of things. Well, I said, you know what? A lot of this shit can be put in one platform and be done pretty easily. Like a mutual action plan, like we can just build that on our pages and like you don't need a whole platform for that. And then we can combine that with video. We can combine that with a timeline. You don't need an app for every one of these little things. Yeah. So what we've built is an app store and a page, and that's where we're going. Right. So you can literally build out everything you need in one place. So it's a consolidation plan.
Sort of like widgets. Is that
it's little widget, all the widgets you need in your sales process. They're right there in the workspace. And for whatever role you're in, right, go to customer success, implementation, all that. And you can build out a page of the widgets you need in order to get a deal done. And that consolidates it. So you don't need 50 freaking tools at once because salespeople don't need another tool. Right. I say that as I'm trying to sell a new tool, but this tool consolidates about 50 tools that they have. Right.
This is your toolbox.
This is your toolbox. That's it. You have video, you have all your widgets for timelines. You have it all in one place in one platform. And then you can take your call transcripts and then make the content that you need. And we help you do that. So take all your 30 call recordings, make me a business case. We do that literally in 5 seconds for you. You don't even need a thing.
I've been waiting for the deal room space to take off. I think a bunch of people have completely failed at it or are in the process of failing at it. The reason I was so curious to talk to you is because I actually think you have that unique combo, right? Like you said earlier, you're the unicorn. You've got the sales and the product piece. So like you've actually lived as a salesperson and you hit the nail on the head there. Like salespeople don't want another tool. They never want to learn how to use something. Like if they don't love it in the first 5 minutes, you're pretty much toast.
Good luck.
Right?
Good luck. Yeah.
And so you get that and you've been a salesperson. So I think if anyone's cut out to really figure this out, it's going to be you.
It is definitely an embryonic type space, right? And so I think it's definitely heating up right now. Still early, but I think our approach is definitely different, right?
It has to make their job easier. That's it. Like,
and it has to be
if
easy
I'm a
to use.
salesperson, give me a tool, and in the first 30 minutes, if it's not making my life easier, like, I'm probably too busy to continue forward, right? And that's kind of how it happens.
Yeah, and I learned that with outreach. You have to make it easy, man. You have to make it, even though outreach got complicated real quick, and because of that, we had to have a lot of manpower to help people adopt it. But now that they have adopted it, that kind of came with needing a bunch of money, right?
Right.
But now you've learned, like, I learned my lesson of, like, okay, how do I do the core of what's needed in the easiest way possible that's different from the approach of the other people in the space. Don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for competitors because we all build the space together. But I will say, the one thing that I will say is, like, the approach, they're all doing kind of the same approach in terms of, like, making it like a website builder. When we were like, no, let's make it like a document because everyone knows how to use a document, right? And so we're like this, more of a super document experience versus like a Squarespace website builder, because
it's more sales friendly.
Yeah, it's just like, sailors aren't website builders. They're not designers,
As much as, but a product person would think, well, they could do it. It's drag and drop. But they won't want to.
No, exactly. Like, and you get that insight from actually having done sales and building for salespeople in the past, right?
If I could just pull out a Google Doc and it's easier, I'm going to use the Google Doc every single time. So it has to be easier than that. Like, it just has to.
It has to be easier. It has to have everything consolidated. It has exactly. You have to have lived it really to, like, get it. And so I always tell people is, like, they ask, well, why'd you build Distribute? And I've told you all the reasons. The problem we're solving is let's increase win rates. Let's make sellers show up better. Let's help consolidate the stack so they're not confused. Let's help them, with ramp time, because now they have all their playbooks for, what they need to do in one place. All that stuff. I can talk to you all day about it, right? Tons of value there. People love it. People see it. The real reason I built this was to solve my own problem. I was like, holy crap, I'm using all these tools. I need something way simpler that has everything in one. Like, I'm tired of opening 50 tabs to, like, send them a document, with, like, some information. It's stupid. So everything Taplio built for myself, everything I've ever kind of built. Outreach, funny enough, I wanted to build outreach, and some people were like, no, go join this team. They're building something great, what you just described. And that's literally what I did, right? So it's all come down to that. And that's, I guess you can call it my secret sauce. But, like, if I'm not passionate about it and, like, it's not solving my own problem, and I think for a lot of people, it's going to be hard to, like, spend 5 years doing something, you know? So I've kind of resonated with that and been like, yep, I've had the problem. I know millions of other people have it too. Let's build something great for it. So that's really the reason, if I'm telling you that.
It's the best products come from a founder who's solving their own problem.
And that's it, man. And that's really the reason. I can give you fluff about win rates and all this stuff, but it was just really, that was it. And I want to make my life easier.
Well, who should check you guys out? AEs, they can go in and they don't need their boss or their manager. They don't have to integrate stuff. They can just get in and start using this thing.
Yeah, they can get in. It's PLG, so you can get in, start using it. Go use our templates. There's a ton of amazing templates in there. We have some coming in from a bunch of influencers. We need to get Collin's in there as well. Yours, Collin. So we have, like, people's business case templates where we're recruiting people for those. We're recruiting people for their mutual action plan templates. So go in there. You'll see all the expert templates that we have.
So it's not just a build your own library. It's like you're signing into an existing library of stuff.
Yeah. We have 100 plus templates for anything you need to build.
That's cool.
Right?
That's
in your sales process. Yeah.
That's something that worked real well for HubSpot, right? You sign up and it's like, you can set it up for yourself, but it's also already kind of set up for you, right?
Yep.
That was huge. That was so different from Salesforce. Like, they have templates in there, all this stuff. Like, you sign up for Salesforce, I don't think at least when I did, they weren't doing that. You had to create everything. Yeah.
You need someone who knows Salesforce to set up Salesforce, man. Yeah. You can't be, it's like a blank slate versus HubSpot is more of like, okay, pick what's common.
Salespeople need that, man. Especially because you're showing them, like, hey, here's how it works best. And now you can go in and mess with it and all this stuff. But when you just have a blank slate, it's really hard to adopt that without an engineer figuring it all out for you.
Yeah, it is, man. And then look at what the pros are doing, And so that's kind of, we're the HubSpot of the deal room space, right? Where we come in and we're kind of making it a lot easier to build all this stuff. Surely you can go build some similar stuff in some other deal rooms, but it's a lot more clunky, right? As well. what I would say. So, but again, I never publicly call out my competitors or anything. It's like, we're all building the space. It definitely works, the beef stuff. But like, I told my team, because a couple of people were like, hey, like maybe we should do some beef and like put something together. I'm just like, it will work, but I just don't want that to be how we do it.
Yeah.
So I just want to do it based on having the best product and having great marketing on, that people excites people. And that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah. Especially when it's a sales tool. The way to do it is to just go viral with crushing it with the product. I mean, look at everyone talks about clay nonstop. It's like, because it works. It does what they want it to do. So they use it. They talk about it. Like,
yeah.
Right. That's the easiest way to market it. It's just build a great product.
Yeah.
Right.
Adam Robinson and I talk about this a lot, man. And because we're both in Austin. And what I would say is we have these debates, right? And like we're friends where it's healthy debates. And, we talk about stuff because it makes us better. And we always come back to the agreement that if you have a killer product, it makes everything else easier. It's 80% of the work, right? Yes. It always comes back down to that. And we're both like, yep, that's it. That, just everything comes back down to having a great freaking product, man. Like, it's kind of
what I think the answer was to my earlier question when I say, like, how do people at Outreach have these long tenures? It's like, you had a great product. You guys were hitting sales records. Like, there's just a lot less pressure to keep finding new people. Yeah. Things are working, right?
Yeah. You have a great product that fits what the market wants, right? Don't forget about that. You can have a slick, sexy looking product, but if it doesn't solve a problem that the market wants, then good luck, right? But
that's why I laugh at these companies that are constantly turning people over and blaming it on them. It's like, maybe your product just sucks.
Yeah, maybe
probably.
Maybe the product sucks. Maybe it's not solving a problem. Maybe it's not like the right time for it, right? Like,
or it's just a lot mediocre. Of things, it's just kind of good, and you're expecting these stellar results, and you're like, well, we must just need a new VP of sales now. Like, it just must be that they must not be as good. But it's just so often they don't look inward and just say, well, maybe our product's just not that incredible.
Yeah, Mark and I have talked a lot about this too, which is like, if you like, really, man, the biggest tailwind to like you having a good tenure as a VP or even a founder or whatever it is like, it comes back to the product being fucking great. Like, it comes back down. Mark will tell you, he's like, dude, I don't have any magic bullets. He'll tell you, right? Like, we were right time, right place. Costa Glow. And he'll tell you straight up, like, right time, right place. And I got lucky, man. He also worked his ass off. Don't get me wrong. Like we all did.
He's a phenomenal sales leader. Yeah.
And
that's the answer he gave. He was on the podcast. He gave pretty much that
right
answer.
Place, man. And so sometimes the VP of sales, like, it's not always them, man. Like, if they get let go and like all this, it's like sometimes the product just, they don't have a tailwind, right? They're facing all headwinds, and they don't have the tailwinds.
And everyone's getting compared to the best. And it's like, unless you can also be the best, well, then it's like, now you look like you suck. And it's a tough world out there. Yeah.
It's tough, man. Because you can't, it's not apples to apples, man. Like, if you're comparing the VP of sales at Snowflake versus a startup, and you're like, you can say like, oh yeah, they're crushing it. Well, guess what? They're a great product, the right time. It's what's needed in the market. Yeah, they're doing great, but really they don't know the magic bullet. They got lucky, man. It's just like when you start, it's the same thing as starting a company. Right time, right place. Sure, a great product, but like, there's a lot of fucking luck involved. Like, Gordon and Wes, two of the Outreach founders, are some of my best friends, right? Like, we text every day, and like, they're some of the most humble people in the world. And why I think it is, they haven't told me this, is because I don't want to speak for them, but I think it's because they know that they got very lucky with what they built and when they built it, right? And they worked their fucking ass off as well. Don't get me wrong. You
got to take the at bats to get lucky.
They got I mean, they didn't build Outreach. So I don't know if you know the story, but like, Wes and Gordo built Outreach to help sell the recruiting tool that no one wanted. And people started to say, hey, we don't want your recruiting tool. We want whatever you're using to follow up with us.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
That's the story. And so literally that is what hit, right? So sometimes, remember when I said
makes so much sense why it's such a great product, because it literally came from solving a real problem.
Yes. And this goes back to tinkering, right? I told you, trying things to help you solve your own problems. That's literally how Outreach started, right? So you think about that, and it always comes back down to that, man. Like, the product, the product.
And execution and all that. I don't want to diminish the fact that you guys are wildly talented and all that stuff, but it is refreshing to hear that. I mean, I've sold good products before. Aircall's a great product. Probably didn't have the same sort of hot streak as like Outreach did, but that was a timing thing, right? TalkDesk did have that hot streaks. They're a few years ahead of us. Like a lot of it's timing, a lot of it's this and that, but it's refreshing to hear that from people who, sitting in my shoes a lot of time, I'm just like looking around like, the hell are these guys doing different than me? How are they staying there for 8 years? Like, I know I'm working my ass off. I know I'm doing as good as a VP sales could possibly do. Not perfect.
Yeah.
No, I'm not perfect, but no one is. Like, and it's like, what do they expect, right? Like you, at a certain point, you're just like, what do they really think a human being is going to come in here and do? And so it is, I know, refreshing for me and for other people listening to hear that coming from the people who've had these super hot streaks. It's like, yes, you guys did something awesome, but it's nice to hear that like you're human too, right? And maybe the product gets a little bit of credit.
Dude, no one has the magic answer, dude. No one. I've worked with every VP of sales at every tech company, literally, because they used outreach. I've been on site, I've talked to. No one has the magic bullet, man. Like
we're good at sounding like we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, that's part of the job. That's part of that's the political side of it. But no one has the magic bullet. Everyone's just trying to figure it out, man. And like, I know that sounds cliche, but the ones that look like they're making it, even me included, we had tailwind, right? Like we have tailwind. I'm waiting for my tailwind for Distribute. We're doing fairly well, but I'm still waiting for it, right? Like, don't get me wrong. And so, we're doing everything we possibly can, but we can't control the market. Yeah. Right. The market controls itself. That's the beauty of a market. So like, you just have to, sometimes you have to be patient. And that's very hard for even people like me who are fucking go. Yeah. Like just keep pushing, just keep going. And you have to tell your team that too, because the timing is a big part of all of this game of business, man. It is huge, especially in software. And, sometimes you're too early, sometimes you're too late, sometimes you kind of bet on where the puck is going as well. Yeah. Right. Like that's one of your kind of mental, at least my mental models of like, is this solving my problem? Yes. Great. Or do other people have this problem? Probably, but are a fuck ton of people going to have this problem in 3 years? Yeah. Right. And that's where the puck is going. Are they going to realize they have this problem in 3 years? And then you bet on that. And so that is kind of what you're betting on, in my opinion. And so like, sometimes your bets are wrong. Just that's how life works out, man. And keep so tweaking. That's why you keep going. You gotta keep building stuff, and you gotta keep building stuff, and you gotta keep building stuff, because some will work, some won't. Like you hear about all my success shit. You don't see it. We haven't talked about all the stuff that failed. I've built 10 plus products. Right. I've
tried building some startups. Not actually coding, but I've got some stuff that didn't go so well. We all have got some carnage there.
And so and your friends will make fun of you, and they'll be like, "Wow, like well, Andy."
Everyone makes fun of things that they don't have the courage to try themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And like, why are you doing these things? And just keep trying and tinkering. And like you will come. I promise, like you will come up with something. Like most people will. Like if it's
and pick a problem, right? They say like, don't be so glued to the product you're trying to build. Pick a problem you want to solve, and then keep tinkering, like you said, until you get there, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be the next SpaceX, man. Like the biggest thing that my friends, and I love them to death, but they'll be like, I want to build this thing that does this, and then this, and then this. I'm like, dude, what's the one biggest thing out of that whole list that like you think would make an impact? Just build that. Right? And like people think you have to build the next SpaceX. Most of the best products started as the simplest ideas, right? Like if you look at Gong, it's a behemoth now. Yeah. Dude, Gong was a call recorder, like just a call recorder, right? And like it started as that, and now they've got a bunch of pipeline and all this other stuff that like teams use, right? But like it started as a call recorder and just that,
The first thing I sold was a menu button. That's literally what we sold.
Yes.
And you go to Yelp and Google and you look up a restaurant now and you click like view menu. We were the company that put that there. So we would call restaurants and say, hey, we've got partnerships with all these sites and we can get a button there to have your actual menu instead of these photographs. Like that was the whole company. Sold it for $100 million less than 2 years.
Yeah.
See, like that's it.
Dude, exactly. Right? Like what? Yeah. And I think a lot of people try and build the ocean. And don't get me wrong, for Distribute, we built a lot of shit, but we came in knowing we're going to have to build a lot of shit because our whole goal was like consolidation, right? So if you're going into that knowing and you're taking a big bet, then hell yeah, right? But like if you're just getting started, do not start there, right? The game, like everyone's kind of also playing a different game. Like don't look at my game and be like, that's the game I want to play, because it's a whole different game, right? If I was getting started today, I would pick something super simple that solves a problem. right? Like build a call recorder. Like it's
easier to
now.
sell too, right? Because the more things you build, you have to now convince people they need to solve all those problems. I just realized we went way over. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I told my team
Okay.
I Collin, great
Likewise.
combo, man. Yeah, dude, awesome.
I could talk to you forever, man. Well, let's get everyone to try out Distribute.so, right? .so, Distribute.so. So everyone go out there. They can just sign up and try it out.
Sign up, try it. PLG, just, put in your email, boom, done. You can try it for free. Just go in there, look at all the templates, start there and see what other people are doing is what I'd say.
And where should people follow you?
Just LinkedIn. Cool. Yeah, I have X, but honestly, I don't go on X. I scroll X. I don't post anything on X, but I can only focus on one thing at a time. So LinkedIn, Andy Mewborn, grab me there. And then Collin, you're the man, dude. Talk to you soon, Collin. You're the man.
Thanks so much, brother.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bro.